It's 1991. Somewhere deep within Nintendo headquarters is a group of passionate staff members working to port a very special game from the Super Nintendo Entertainment System to the Game Boy. This project was led by Takashi Tezuka. Quote, "But at the time, we still had an idea of simply translating The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, to a Game Boy. They didn't stop there. There was more work to be done. There was this television series that aired from 1990 to 1991, conveying themes like spirit possession, murder, and paranoia. Quote, the drama was all about a small number of characters in a small town. It has plot twists and turns, and the visual style is mwah, which inspired a generation of brooding artists. And Tezuka was one of those artists. Quote, Mr. Tezuka requested a world full of strange characters, like in Twin Peaks, which was a popular show back then. Koizumi worked on the main thread of the story and I did the odd characters. Hell, it inspired people when I was in film school in 2014. It's weird, creepy, and just so doggone mysterious. After everyone else in the building had gone home, the team worked tirelessly. They were committed to making a new game come to life, no matter the cost. Quote, we were working on that after our other work was done. Do not conflate artistic passion with the current struggles of the American working class. This was different. They were relentless. They were sneaking around right under Mr. Miyamoto's nose. This was a secret game. The people were risking their very real jobs at Nintendo, of all places, because they were just so passionate about telling this one specific story. Quote, it has a different feeling for that reason, just making a game that we wanted to make. It may defy Zelda conventions. It might have interesting characters and situations we might not have had otherwise. See, they had a vision of the game that mixed mysterious story with fun and immersive gameplay. Quote, my ambition had always been to make drama. That was my goal. Having a character in a certain kind of world, having him go through a series of actions to accomplish something, and creating a dramatic tension throughout that. And games seemed like a very good opportunity to create that kind of drama that you don't find in films. It was very interesting. There were extended dialogue interactions, elaborate trading sequences, and a lot of character-driven dialogue. Tezuka wanted a strong focus on story with mysterious elements. Quote, I came in to write that manual, as I did on the previous game. I then wrote a script that fit my vision of an egg hatching on a mountaintop. But they had nothing in place, so I ended up making an entire story to go along with the game. The dream, the island, that was all mine. Hi, I'm Moxie, and this is my favorite Zelda game, Link's Awakening. Now this is not lore to sleep to. I want you to sit up, and I want you to really listen to what I have to say. In film school, I had this professor, Professor Boland. Story is the most important thing. What's the most important thing, class? Story. What was that?
Wait, this isn't physics too.
Story. He would say this over and over. Anytime a student didn't consider the importance of completing a character's story arc, or the story outright just didn't make sense, Professor Boland would flame that student, and for good reason. Bad stories are a waste of everyone's time. There's a windfish who sleeps inside of a giant egg on top of the Tal Tal mountain range. The only way Link can leave Koholint Island is by waking up this so-called windfish. The whole time you're playing the game, you can't help but wonder what's really going on. It has unique background music for each dungeon. Turtle Rock was the first fire dungeon. The weird owl who advises you ends up in a little-known game that we'll get to in a second. By exploring the world, you were able to unlock more and more about this mysterious windfish and the nature of this very lonely island. The NPCs were important to talk to because of the late-game trading sequence that was required to progress the story. You had to know who to give the items to. To know who to give the items to, well, you have to know the NPCs. Every NPC has a reason for being there. I always forget who to give Chef Bear's pineapple to. The funny thing about the game is that it broke the normal conventions of what it meant to be a Zelda game. There would be no Zelda, no Triforce, and it would not take place in Hyrule. The team considered it a parody. Within these rigorous constraints, they were able to make Link's Awakening flourish. Until recently, I was never able to really determine why Link's Awakening was my favorite Zelda game. Perhaps because it was the second Zelda game I had ever played. I still have the original save file too. I consider this game cartridge my most prized possession. None of the other Zelda games have even come close in terms of writing for me. Not Twilight Princess, not Ocarina of Time, or even Skyward Sword. This game. So it came at a surprise when I recently discovered this quote. The staff who worked on The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time had all played The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. So they had a sense of how far they could go with the Legend of Zelda series. Eiji Aonuma. So what you're saying is that you had the entire team play a very creative take on a parody game as a prerequisite to development of one of the most beloved games in the franchise. See, here's the thing. That statement is incredibly incriminating, Mr. Aonuma.
The latest video game craze to sweep the United States and Japan is called Nintendo.
Man, Ocarina of Time was a banger. It shook the Zelda community. It was far from perfect, but it didn't matter. It was packed with lots of stories, secrets, and side quests. It felt profound after finishing a dungeon. Quote, Ocarina of Time would have finished in a much shorter period of time if we had just cut some parts. This tells you everything you need to know about Mr. Miyamoto. Here's the thing. Miyamoto never understood what made these games sell like hotcakes. He thought it was the gameplay that made him money. Let me ask you this. Do you boot up The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time for the stellar graphics? Is it the innovative, top-of-the-line, original IP Do Not Steal Z targeting system? Or is it the thrilling exploration? No. We play for the story. People love Ocarina of Time. It's one of the most, if not the most beloved Zelda game in the franchise. It's sold over 7.6 million, with an M, million units. And who knows how many at this point. Quote, I think that with Ocarina of Time, that was us establishing The Legend of Zelda as a 3D game. Mr. Miyamoto was the director of that title. And then I kind of took the baton from him, and then it was my task to take that form we had established with Ocarina of Time and carry it forward. Then in working with Mr. Fujibayashi with Skyward Sword, I had at one point been involved with the series for quite a while. And then the job became, how do we take what we've established until that point and create something new and carry it forward in the series? That process has continued through Breath of the Wild. Nintendo themselves do not understand why their franchise is successful. Do you not take pride in your storytelling? In film school, Professor Boland would make students go up in front of the class and present their short films. After their short film was finished, everyone in the room was allowed to say exactly how they felt about the film.
That wouldn't be my first lighting choice. I'm with her.
The only thing the student presenting the short film was allowed to say was thank you. He instilled this lesson because when you explain what your art means, it narrows the audience's perception of what they can interpret from that piece. Quote, as you mentioned, we realize that the fans have had a great time theorizing and enjoy thinking about where things fit on the timeline. That's something that the development team recognizes and considers, but to an extent. And I say to an extent because if we get too into the weeds or too detailed in that placement, it results in kind of creating restraints on our creativity. The process of creating new ideas becomes restricted because we're so tied up trying to make this fit into a very specific spot in the timeline. We do consider it, but not to an extent where we feel that our development process feels restricted or constrained.
Yeah?
Cry me a river, Mr. Fujibayashi. Rigid constraints are something that many art students have felt the pain of. I wish I could have told my college teachers, this assignment is really interfering with my creativity. Link's Awakening was made with nothing but constraints. No Triforce, no Zelda, no Hyrule. But still, make it Zelda. Huh? Constraints increase critical and creative thinking. If something can't be one way, you invent the reason it's the other way. Authors who write amazing stories and characters consider them to be real people and real stories. A believable character reacts to the world in a believable way. This is just a lousy excuse to not do your job. Mario is not deep, never presented itself to be more than what it is. I can understand the argument for gameplay first in this series. Zelda is a story game because there is no other reason I pressed A that many times in Skyward Sword. Link's Awakening was entirely focused on telling a story with compelling characters and interesting drama. To get to Eagle's Tower, Link must beat his head against the wall and try and figure out how to get across these chasms. It's not until he does the signpost maze and then learns the frog song of the soul that he can awaken the flying blue rooster. This allows him to find the bird key to go to Eagle's Tower. Now, I know what you're thinking. The bird doesn't have a whole storyline, does it? Yep. The flying rooster makes its new home in the hen house in Tal Tal mountain range. And this is for a rooster.
Bird up.
I don't really know a more concise way to say Tears of the Kingdom was bad, other than this is how the story in Tears of the Kingdom felt.
What did you think?
The game aged faster than milk.
Yeah.
When I sat back and I thought about the story, it felt like pandering. Like, I don't know, like, oh, well, we'll just throw in some time travel and like Ocarina of Time, and they'll love it. No. Ocarina of Time slaps because Link, us, the player character, is the one doing the time traveling. That's what makes it so damn profound. We are the ones participating. We get to go explore the world and how it changed. That is what made it interesting. This is garbage. You ask me why I'm so damn salty, why I'm so fucking mad. Tears of the Kingdom feels like a clickbait, a cash grab. I can pinpoint the exact moment when I knew things were gonna go bad. It was when the game had leaked. I was sitting across the booth from Dr. Wily when he said, "It's not a good game." Say it ain't so. 18 memories Link cannot participate in. Link cannot communicate what he knows with the NPCs. The NPCs don't matter because you can complete that shit in 42 minutes flat. Half the characters in Hyrule do not even know who saved them. It was me, I saved you. What is so weird is that no one really remembers, and that's crazy. You know why Breath of the Wild is so much more profound? Because we spent years pondering over who the Sheikah were, wondering what their culture was like, and how they got their magical abilities. These ideas have been bubbling over since the royal family tomb. Breath of the Wild gave us context, not answers. The trailer presented something that felt profound. We all clicked pre-order.
It's so beautiful.
Then Rauru had the gall to hang around long enough just to show his feet and leave. There's no story progression because you're free to go anywhere and do anything. This freedom of exploration is lame. Get a load of this guy who is a writer for a living. I've been a writer for a very long time. The book example you gave is a good one. When a story is crafted with the intention of sequels and prequels, there are thousands of subtle hints of where its direction came from and where it's going. In my case, my first book series takes place toward the end of the world's timeline. That said, there had to be enough context with the setting, a setting that, for story's sake, had to have existed prior to the story. It took over a decade to craft what I have and treat detail with respect. There had to be enough to get readers thinking. That said, it seems as though writers for Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild to some extent, used the previous game's stories and lore as a crutch for its lack of contribution to the narrative. Now, major parts of those older games are reduced to nothing more than tourist spots with no added meaning or context. Don't have a clue why so many people claim this to be good storytelling. You sit here and wonder why us content creators are not really doing stuff, but here's the thing, there's not that much content to talk about. DJ Peach Cobbler was right when he said this shit looks like it's from Fisher-Price. It has zero decorum. There's nothing ancient or mysterious about this. It's insulting. What is there to explore for? What the fuck? Shut up! The most exciting quest-related item is the Sage's Sword found in Typhlo Ruins, but seriously, this is the baseline for an interesting quest. This quest shouldn't be the most interesting or mysterious one. They said Ganondorf ain't never killed nobody, but I and the rest of the Zelda community specifically remember the Iwata Sage getting murdered in 720p. The developers are telling you in plain Japanese, there is no story here. This is only a game for fun. You thought this shit was profound? Lol.
It's fiction. It's an urban legend that never happened.
Go the fuck home. There's no story to discover. Everything that ever was will be. These are all just legends anyway. Fine. Fine. Tears of the Kingdom is a joke. I only cover content that takes itself seriously. I'm done biting my tongue and watching what I say. I don't give a single fuck what you think. In a time with nothing but sequels, prequels, and remakes, in a time of clearly tone-deaf content, it's important to say what you mean and mean what you say. I don't care if you like me or my content. I care about being authentic. I like talking about stories that take me seriously. My content only focuses on stories, and Tears of the Kingdom is not a story, it's a cash grab, because they don't want to put effort into their own story. You know, Draken told me that they don't even have a script supervisor on the credits. That's insane. A script supervisor is the person to ensure the continuity is maintained. That doesn't mean they don't have one, but it could. You can see how this gets problematic, right?
Wait.
They have torn apart their own fan base. As they said, that one thing that you're talking about, the timeline, doesn't really matter because it's too constraining to think about.
No.
They're calling people's theories out directly in magazines and discrediting them entirely. Just let us have our fun. Can you just shut up and let us have our fun? They have been policing how everyone sees the story and mansplaining what the fuck reincarnation. We know what it is. Tears of the Kingdom based its success off the momentum of Ocarina of Time. Ocarina of Time was based on the creativity of Link's Awakening. I'll leave it on this note. In Link's Awakening, Malon is the one to find Link on the beach. She helps Link all throughout his quest. At one point, though, Malon is standing on the beach. She expresses that she wants to become a bird. And at the end of the game, Link discovers that it was all a dream. But if Link completes the game without dying, what's the most important thing, class?